Okay. For some reason my webcam is not working today, so today I'm just going to be a voice and you can see my pen writing, and hopefully it'll get fixed soon and that'll go away. But for now, it's just going to be a voice on the screen. So today we're going to do 4-9 scientific notation. With scientific notation, I wanted to split up the sections. I just thought it was a lot to put in one. So today we're going to order numbers from least to greatest that are in scientific notation. So when we look at these three numbers that are given, they're not technically in scientific notation yet. Remember that? So let's start with this first one. 0.064 times 10 to the 8th. So we have to make this into scientific notation. So if you have 0.064, whoops, I hit my button there. We got to move it over 2 places, so that becomes 6.4 times 10 to the negative 2. Okay, and then we still have this up here, times 10 to the negative, or times 10 to the 8th. So this becomes 6.4 times 10 to the 6th, because remember, when we have the same base, we add our exponents. Okay, 312 times 10 to the 2nd. Again, this is not in scientific yet, so we have to change 312 to make it 3.12 times 10 squared. So we have this 10 squared and this 10 squared. So that becomes 3.12 times 10 to the 4th. And then this one right here, 0.58, if we want to change that, we got to move it 1 to the right. So that becomes 5.8 times 10 to the negative 1. And if we multiply that times 10 to the 7th, it becomes 5.8 times 10 to the 6th. I kind of went through this part quickly because that's what we did on section 4-9A. Okay, so now when we look at them, we have to decide which is bigger. Which is the smallest to the largest. Okay, so when they're lined up, you can just look at the exponents to start. We look at the exponent, the one with the smallest exponent is the smallest. So 3.12 times 10 to the 4th, that's the smallest. Okay, now when we look at our next two, we have to move to doing it, since they're both 10 to the 6th, then you look at which one of the main numbers is smaller. Okay, so this one becomes 5.8 times 10 to the 6th is smaller than 6.4 times 10 to the 6th. Okay, so technically you should go back and rewrite which ones they went with. Okay, when it says order from least to greatest, we're talking about this first row here. Okay, so this 10 to the 4th went right here, so it's 312 times 10 squared. So yes, you have to rewrite that. 0.58 times 10 to the 7th, and then the biggest number is 0.064 times 10 to the 8th would be your biggest. So that's in order from least to greatest. You have to go back and write your original one. Okay? Let's do another example. This time it has your negative exponents on here. Okay, so 8 times 10 to the negative 9th, that one's already in scientific notation because this 8 is between 1 and 10. So we're good there. Now this 14.7 we need to make, we go 1 to the left. So that makes it 1.47 times 10 to the 1st, and then times 10 to the negative 7th, because that's what we got right there. So 1.47 times 10 to the negative 6th, because we're going to add 1 and negative 7. And then over here we got to make 0.22 in scientific. We move it to the right one, so that becomes 2.2 times 10 to the negative 1. I went blank there for a minute. And then times 10 to the negative 10, because again we get that from right here. Okay, so this becomes 2.2 times 10 to the negative 11th. Okay, so we have these three we're dealing with now to decide which is the smallest to largest. Okay, so it should be exactly what you think. Negative 6 is technically the biggest number, remember, because it's negative, so that's going to be your biggest. Negative 9, since none of these exponents are the same, So this would be 2.2 times 10 to the negative 11th would be the smallest because you're moving the decimal to the left. So remember, that's a lot of zeros. And then 8 times 10 to the negative 9th would be the next, and then 1.47 times 10 to the negative 6th would be the smallest number. It's actually the closest to 0, though it's still a really, really small number. Okay, so if we were to rewrite it correctly, like we had up here, the 2.2, so this would be 0.22 times 10 to the negative 10th. This one is still written correctly. And then 14.7 times 10 to the negative 7th. So this is the correct order. Okay. So you need to remember we're dealing with really small numbers here, okay? But the one with the more zeros is going to be smaller. Okay, so that's why that one is right there. Okay. Multiplying with scientific notation is the last thing we're going to learn with scientific notation. And multiplying with scientific notation is really, it's not that stressful, so don't stress about it. So let's use green. So if we multiply, all you do is you take your whole numbers, or doesn't have to be a whole number, your numbers out in front, 3, you group them, you do 3 times 9, okay, and then you have your 10 to the negative 7th times 10 cubed. You have those together. So you have 9 and 3 is 27, and then we have times 10, and remember we combine, when we multiply, we combine our exponents, so negative 7 plus 3 is going to give me negative 4. Now, if this was in scientific notation, you would leave it, but it's not because that 27 right there. Okay, so we have to make our, I'm just going to move it over here actually. So this, we need to make it 2.7, so this becomes 2.7 times 10 to the first, and then we still had our 10 to the negative 4th, so 2.7 times 10 to the negative 3 would be your answer here. When you multiply this problem, you get that. Okay. So coming down here, 2.3 times 5, so you just do 2.3 times 5, which is going to give me 11.5. I did that earlier. And then we do the 10 to the 6th times 10 cubed. Okay, so that's going to give you 10 to the 9th. So now we have 11.5 times 10 to the 9th. Okay, again, if this was in scientific notation, you would stop and be done, but it's not. Okay, so we have to make 11.5. We move it to the left 1 again, so it'd be 1.15 times 10 to the 1st times 10 to the 9th right here. So we have, going back, 1.15 times 10 to the 10th. And there you go. Okay, so we really get a lot of practice on putting things in scientific notation. Okay, but when you multiply, you just multiply the numbers in the front, the whole numbers, they're not always integers, but whatever numbers in front, and then you add your exponents together. And then all I have is here's a little, if you can you figure this out, what it's trying to say? Exponents are number, see if you can figure that out.